The snow fell again the following Christmas, just like it had the year before. But this time, Daniel Carter wasn't sitting alone on a park bench, staring into the night. He was back in Amara's home, only now everything had changed. He wasn't just a guest this time. He knew the names of everyone in the family. The kids ran to him shouting, "Uncle Daniel!" before he even stepped fully inside. He brought pies, helped set the table, and laughed like he had lived there all his life. It wasn't just their tradition anymore. It had become his, too. In the kitchen, Amara's grandmother gave him a gentle cough on the hand for sneaking a cookie. Amara's mother asked when he planned to propose. Everyone laughed, including Daniel, but only Amara blushed. During dinner, he passed the dishes around, made everyone laugh with a story about his terrible cooking skills, and, in a moment that felt quietly perfect, slipped his hand under the table and gently held Amara's. She looked at him and smiled, squeezing his fingers back. That small moment said everything. This wasn't just a holiday visit. It was home. He still ran his company, still made decisions worth millions. But now he had something even more valuable. Someone to come home to. People who cared whether he showed up. A place where he wasn't the CEO, the strategist, the business genius. He was Daniel. Just Daniel. As they all sat by the fireplace after dinner, sipping cocoa and listening to the kids sing Christmas songs off-key, he found himself staring out the window for a brief moment. Outside, the snow fell just like it had a year ago, and he remembered how it all started. Not with a merger, not with an investment, but with one question, asked by a stranger who had no idea who he was. "Do you want to have dinner with me?" That single sentence, simple, human, unexpected, had changed his life forever. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment, give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories every week. Her words hit harder than she could have imagined. In Daniel's world, relationships were built on contracts, partnerships, and negotiation tables. Nothing came free. Nothing came from the heart. But here was a woman with no idea who he was, offering warmth without any strings, offering kindness just because someone looked like they needed it. For a brief second, Daniel glanced down at his phone. 3 unread emails, 2 missed calls, and a message from his assistant reminding him of a late-night virtual meeting with a partner in Tokyo. He could go back to his office, dive back into numbers and reports, and pretend this moment never happened. That was the safe, familiar choice. But his fingers didn't move. Instead, he looked back up at Amara, standing patiently, holding that warm cup like a quiet invitation to a different kind of life. Her eyes weren't filled with pity. They held strength, warmth, and something Daniel hadn't seen in a very long time. Genuine humanity. "You're serious?" he asked, still trying to make sense of it. "Of course," she said. "It's Christmas. No one should be alone on a night like this." He couldn't remember the last time someone invited him anywhere without checking his schedule, asking his assistant, or planning 2 weeks in advance. No scripts, no reservations, just a spontaneous act of connection. He let out a soft chuckle, one that surprised even him. It had been too long since he laughed without forcing it. Rising from the bench, brushing snow from his coat, Daniel looked at her and said, "All right, let's do something unexpected." As they began walking down the snow-covered sidewalk, something inside him shifted. The sounds of the city didn't feel as harsh. The cold didn't bite as much. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't being seen as Daniel Carter, the CEO, the business tycoon, the man behind a tech empire. He was just Daniel, a lonely soul walking beside someone who saw the person, not the title. he noticed how Amara greeted a few familiar faces along the way. The flower vendor who was closing early. The old man sweeping snow outside a cafe. She belonged to the kind of world he had left behind long ago. The world that smelled of home-cooked food, sounded like real laughter, and moved without rush or pressure. As they walked, Daniel didn't ask where exactly they were going. He didn't need to know. What mattered was that for once, he was following something that didn't come from a calendar or a strategic plan. He was following a moment, a person, a feeling. Amara's apartment was tucked inside a modest brick building just a few blocks away from the park. There was nothing grand about it. No marble floors, no glass elevators, no luxury decor. But as soon as Daniel stepped through the front door, something hit him harder than any corporate success ever had. It felt like home. The living room was small but alive. A glowing Christmas tree stood in the corner, half of its ornaments handmade by the kids. The smell of spices and roasted vegetables drifted from the kitchen, where laughter echoed from a group of people busy preparing dinner. A small radio played a crackling old-school Christmas tune in the background. The walls weren't covered in expensive art, but they held framed photos of memories, birthdays, graduations, family vacations. As Amara called out, "I brought a guest," the entire room seemed to brighten. Her grandmother, wearing a colourful apron, turned with a warm smile and said, "Well, come on in, baby. You're just in time for the cornbread." Someone offered him a plate. Someone else pulled out a chair. No one asked who he was, what he did, or why he looked like he stepped out of a business magazine. They just welcomed him. As if he had always belonged there, Daniel took a seat at the crowded table. And before he could even finish introducing himself, a steaming plate of food was placed in front of him. Collard greens, mac and cheese, sweet potatoes, fried chicken. It was a feast, but not the kind served at black tie dinners. It was real food, comfort food, the kind that warms your heart, not just your stomach. As he took his first bite, someone cracked a joke at the table, and everyone burst into laughter. Daniel laughed too, and it wasn't the polite laugh he was used to giving at formal events. It was real, full, and freeing. He caught himself smiling more than he had in months. Amara sat across from him, smiling as she watched her family fill the room with love. She didn't interrupt, didn't explain, didn't guide the evening. She simply let her world do what it did best: embrace people as they were. The kids asked Daniel silly questions, like whether he could eat 12 cookies in 1 minute or if he liked cartoons. Her uncle told wild stories from when he was young, clearly exaggerating but making everyone howl with laughter. At one point, Amara's mother leaned in and said, "You have kind eyes. You must have needed this." Daniel nodded, a lump forming in his throat. It was chaotic, a little loud, not at all structured, and yet Daniel had never felt so at peace. For years, he had eaten at the finest restaurants, attended the most exclusive events, and shaken hands with world leaders. But never had he felt the way he did tonight. Just another person at the table. No name tags, no pressure, no expectations. Just food, people, and stories. The walls didn't shine with luxury, but they vibrated with love. And somewhere between the second helping of sweet potatoes and the 5th round of laughter, Daniel realized something. This is what he had been missing. Not wealth, not admiration, not success, but connection. Genuine, raw, human connection. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like family. The night was winding down, and the laughter in the apartment slowly gave way to yawns and soft goodbyes. Daniel stood near the door, coat in hand, ready to leave. But part of him didn't want to. He hadn't felt this full in a long time. Not just from the food, but from something deeper. Connection, warmth, and belonging. It was a different kind of richness. the kind that couldn't be measured in stock prices or profit margins. He turned to Amara, who was gently wiping down the table, a soft smile still on her face from her cousin's earlier joke. Daniel reached into his coat pocket, pulled out his business card, and held it out to her. "If you ever want to visit my world," he said softly, the card between his fingers like a quiet invitation. Amara looked at the card, then at Daniel, and her smile grew, calm, confident, and a little teasing. "You've already stepped into mine," she said. "Maybe you were meant to stay." Her words echoed in his chest like a slow, steady heartbeat. He walked out that night into the snowy streets with a different feeling in his chest. Not loneliness, not emptiness, but hope. The kind of hope that something new had started and that he didn't have to return to a life of silence and sterile routine. He had been shown a door to something real, and for once, he wanted to walk through it. The snow fell again the following Christmas, just like it had the year before. But this time, Daniel Carter wasn't sitting alone on a park bench, staring into the night. He was back in Amara's home, only now everything had changed. He wasn't just a guest this time. He knew the names of everyone in the family. The kids ran to him shouting, "Uncle Daniel," before he even stepped fully inside. He brought pies, helped set the table, and laughed like he had lived there all his life. It wasn't just their tradition anymore. It had become his too. "If you ever want to visit my world," he said softly, the card between his fingers like a quiet invitation. Amara looked at the card, then at Daniel, and her smile grew, calm, confident, and a little teasing. "You've already stepped into mine," she said. "Maybe you were meant to stay." Her words echoed in his chest like a slow, steady heartbeat. He walked out that night into the snowy streets with a different feeling in his chest. Not loneliness, not emptiness, but hope. The kind of hope that something new had started and that he didn't have to return to a life of silence and sterile routine. He had been shown a door to something real, and for once he wanted to walk through it. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment, give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories every week. See you in the next one. Stay kind, stay inspired.